Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome in. It is Chris here, and this week has been a little bit different, what with the midweek game. And then instead of our normal Forecast Friday, it is, of course, transfer deadline day. So coming to you a bit later than normal today, as we took the decision to kind of round out, wait for it all to unwind and go through the day's news and the incomings and outgoings. And so you get a summary of what's going on in the world. And so here I am, late at night, putting it all down in audio form for you to digest over the weekend if you don't get a chance to take it all in, or just to listen to me waffle on as always about some of my thoughts. So where do we start? Let's start at the back. Incoming goalkeeper Sam Johnston confirmed, made the official announcement, the club have, from Crystal Palace, £10 million, 31 years of age. He is apparently, according to Gary O'Neill, because it was discussed in the pre-game press conference, that he will be in the matchday squad for Wolves. And Wolves already showed footage of him at practice today, a short practice, albeit, after his signings and things. But even so, interesting, he'll go straight into the squad. It's currently unclear if Jose Sarr will travel. A move to Saudi Arabia has potential in the next few days, with their window not closing until Monday, because it seems very unlikely that he has signed to be a backup. The fact that Wolves go out and spend 10 million on a backup doesn't seem like a thing, and it seems like he is here to be. Even in the interview, they released a little welcome interview, as they always do, and the sound of the words he was saying expressed the fact that it sounded like he expected to play. That's the tone I got, the intonation I got from the words he was saying, from the conversations he'd had with the club. Now, still potentially could just be about competing for the number one, but given the uncertainty recently around Jose Sarr and the rumours from Saudi Arabia, and it seems like they've still been looking for someone all summer as a replacement. We had the Aaron Ramsdale news that fell through. And so they've gone to Sam Johnston. He's straight in the squad tomorrow. What capacity? We don't yet know. Will he be on the bench? Will he start? Will Jose Sarr be in the squad? Is he going to be arranging a transfer to Saudi Arabia? We wait and see. But Sam Johnston, goalkeeper from Crystal Palace, £10 million. So I'm curious what you will think of that one. However, as that is sorted, the biggest, actually, before we get onto the biggest, let's focus on a different one. Not yet officially confirmed by the club, but apparently well underway. He flew in for the medical today, and it could be a late announcement, but providing all the paperwork goes through on time. Carlos Forbes, Portuguese youth international, 20 years old, a winger from Ajax. It's a loan with a buy option that becomes mandatory after a very small number, reportedly around 10 appearances, for 13.5 million euros. Now, obviously, since the departure of Neto, there's been people hoping for a winger. It's never going to be a like for like. It's not going to happen. But another winger option, Carlos Forbes seems to be the one. I mean, that's the one coming in the door. And we've already got Rodrigo Gomez as well. So another wing, more attacking options is great. We've replaced a winger with a winger. So excited to see what comes from Carlos Forbes, and a lot of good discussion around Carlos. So at the point of recording this, the club have not officially announced it, but according to all reports from other sources, it pretty much seems signed, sealed, and delivered, barring any issues, with paperwork at this point. So while we wait on the official confirmation, which may be out by the time you hear this recording, another one that is officially official, announced, signed, sealed, and delivered by the club is one that we did not expect a few days ago. It's all happened very rapidly. I'm sure you've heard the name by now. Andre, the Brazilian midfielder, Brazilian international, 23 years old, from Fluminense. I know I always pronounce that wrong. I'm sure I have. Apologies. Reportedly for 22 million plus 3 million worth of add-ons. This is euros, by the way, 22 million euros plus 3 million. 5-year contract with a 1-year option. and by all accounts, one of the best, if not the best, midfielders in Brazil right now. And so interesting that our Brazilian contingent is growing again, obviously with João Gomes and Cunha, Pedro Lima, and now Andre. Apparently, his full name, because everyone just knows Andre as Andre, but in case you're wondering, the full name is Andre Trindade da Costa Neto. I've probably butchered that. I apologize to Andre, but that's probably why it's just Andre on the back of all his shirts, because it's a mouthful. And so yeah, a lot of big clubs were interested in him. Reportedly, Liverpool were one of them. He's got a great reputation. Going to be sorely missed by all accounts in that part of the world, and a lot of people saying that it is a steal what we are doing getting him. And it seems, by all accounts, from the brief notes that Matt Hobbs has shared in the public announcement, that it's one of those things that's cropped up where the opportunity arose and it was too good to turn down, and they're surprised there wasn't more competition, and they just had to take advantage of the situation. Going into this transfer window, or at least in the last few days, it would be arguable to say that most of us out there weren't necessarily thinking midfield was our weakest position or the place we needed the most cover. Obviously, there's been lots of talk around centre back, and yet here we are with what is actually the marquee signing, arguably in the place we potentially needed it the least. But hey, squad depth is good. Another outstanding looking Brazilian. I'm up for that. And just to put some stats on that, 197 appearances for Fluminense, 4 goals in that time, 4 assists, because they're not about that. They're a similar mold set to João Gomes in many ways, which is one of the other surprising things about it. More of a defensive, tackling midfielder, wins the ball deep, plays it forward, that kind of player. No player has a better pass success rate than Andre in the Brasileiro this season, with a passing rate of 94.4%. So accurate passer, heavy tackler, by gets stuck in, ball winner. I mean, we've already got Lamina and João Gomes who get stuck in as well. So our midfield is going to be brutal for anyone coming up against it, and potentially needs to be, because we haven't. I mean, we'll get into centre back stuff in a moment, but we haven't got some of the other defensive incomings we thought we might get at this point. Again, and I mean, I'm recording this at 11:38 in the evening as I speak to you right now. And so the fact that there isn't a centre-back news to give you means it's probably unlikely. However, great news about Andre. I'm really intrigued and excited to see them in a Wolves shirt. It's a coup by all accounts. So, hey, what's not to love? Another one incoming for to grow with us, obviously potentially to move on in the future. But if they help us along the way and give us some amazing experiences, I'm up for that, people. I'm up for that. So far we've got Sam Johnston in goal. We've got a goalkeeper incoming, but potentially going to be the starter based on current rumours. Andre, Brazilian midfielder. We've got Carlos Forbes, not yet confirmed as at the point of recording this, but pretty much set in stone, Portuguese winger, which is ironic considering we just lost a Portuguese winger. And we spoke yesterday, I believe, in the podcast about the recent signing of French defender Bastien Mapieu. Again, I butcher some of these names. I apologize to their families. Young defenders, so not necessarily what we were looking for in the mold. They're 18 years old from Nantes in France, and that's 5 million euros. It's a 5-year deal with an option of another year. Again, looks brilliant as a prospect, looks fantastic. Seems to be that they will be around the squad. Maybe they'll be mixing between the under-21s and the first team. They might make the bench a bit. They'll be training with the first team squad, not necessarily just in the under-21s. It looks like they'll be in and around the group, learning from the main defenders. And that's great. That's great. If they can learn from the likes of Dawson and kind of get weaned in over the season for the next year or two, that's fantastic. But not necessarily going to jump straight into the deep end. They're not ready. Okay, so that's all the big news from the last 24 hours in terms of incomings. So Johnston, Andre, Carlos Forbes, and Bastian Mupiu, that is. I apologize. It's late, people. It's late. I'm tired, but I had to be here for you. I had to do it. I just had to be. Before we get into the outgoings, I should remind you, everyone, because I do this because I love it, but I also do this as part of a network. And this podcast is not a word. Podcast. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football, and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day. Okay, so we did the incomings, and thank you for sticking with me. Now on to the outgoings that we've got in the last 24 hours or so. So Chiquinho is going out on loan for the season. This is due to Carlos Forbes coming in, winger out, because it's, again, just to make space. They're not going to get the game time, it seems, even though I was really impressed with them in some recent performances. They look really good against Burnley. And what's intriguing is, though, they even did an interview. They did some, Wolves did some PR stuff around Chiquinho being happy to be back in the squad in the past week or two and wanting to fight for a place. I feel a little bit sorry for them. They're going out on loan again, but there we are. They're not going to get the game time, so out they go. They're going to Real Mallorca in La Liga for the season. There is no buy options on that. There was rumours there was. It is not. It's just a loan. No buy options. So Chiquinho will be back next summer. Daniel Podence. Now, the Chiquinho one is confirmed, by the way. That's been fully set. At the point of recording this, the Daniel Podence one is not officially announced, but again, by all accounts, is happening. And one of the reasons it's not officially announced is the place they're going. Their transfer window, again, as with Jose Sarr, does not close till Monday. Daniel Podence has been made an offer to go to Al Shabab. We did report on this the other day, but now we have more concrete facts. £5 million is the figure being touted right now, but with Wolves gaining a sell-on clause of 35%, which is intriguing given his age, and the potential future income doesn't potentially seem to be that drastic. However, 35%, that's a decent figure of any future sell-on. So I guess it's better than a kick in the teeth. So yeah, we're waiting on that to be officially announced, but apparently, and Gary O'Neill even said in his press conference today before the weekend game that Podence, he did confirm that Podence had an offer that was very good for him and his family, and was basically saying his goodbyes. So whilst the club as a whole, as a unit, as a business, as an enterprise, have not officially announced it, Gary O'Neill confirmed it in the conference, and all the other reports means it's basically happening. We're just waiting for the PR images, but you heard it here, people. All right, Fabio Silva is joining Las Palmas on a year-long loan. Las Palmas will cover a major part of their salary, reportedly, rumored to be around 1.8 million euros. I believe at the moment, again, there is no option to buy on that, just another loan, which is intriguing. Maybe they're hoping he will actually increase his value this time. Because the first, was it 2 years ago? The first loan he did probably increased his value slightly because he actually did okay. And then last season, with Rangers and wherever else, he just absolutely tarnished it. So maybe they're hoping this will be a chance for him to rebuild that value from scratch again and hope to move him on properly next summer. But out the door, Fabio, I'm sorry, your time is done. Your time is now. We should also say as well, we spoke in the recent podcast following the Burnley game about Boubacar Traore being injured in that game. Now, by all accounts, with the incomings of Andre particularly, he would be another that would be going out on loan, given what's happened in the last 24 hours. But during that knee injury incurred, what we thought was a knee injury incurred during the game, turns out to be confirmed now as damage to the lateral meniscus, which will require surgery. So they're basically out for the count. Boubacar is pretty much over for this season. Would have gone on loan most likely, as I say, but now they will just be in surgery and recovery. So it's sad. He's had a couple of injuries since he came to the club, and I like him. He seems really like a nice guy. He's always smiling, and he really gets. I just love the way he just hounds people and gets stuck in. And I think the fans appreciate him. I do. You never seem. He feels like he's very gangly and doesn't always look like he knows what he's doing. But I kind of like him. There's something about him I like. You know that he's just going to give 110% at least. But yeah, I'm sorry for Boubacar. Poor boobs. So, people, that is all of the incomings we've had since we last spoke. Overall, though, I have to say, I mean, the main things that we should consider here is let's go through the incomings for the summer as a whole. Excuse me. So, if we think back to the earlier part, it seems like a lifetime ago now when the first few signings came in, because we got some so early in the window. Obviously, Tommy Doyle technically became a permanent member of the squad this summer. Rodrigo Gomez, Pedro Lima, Jorgen Strand Larsen, Bastian Mapio, Sam Johnston, Andre, and Carlos Forbes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 incomings in terms of senior squad we're talking about. There have been some incomings to the academy in the last 24 hours as well, a couple of which we mentioned this week on the pod as being in the pipeline. I'm going to focus for the purpose of today and the time and the whole like transfer deadline excitement on the senior squad. So it's a decent number of incomings. Technically, the squad depth, I think, is better overall than it has been in a very long time, even if maybe some of the positional quality is not as high as it was. And going out, though, we have obviously Pedro Neto went out, Max Kilman went out. Arguably, the Max Kilman one is the most upsetting in terms of not being positionally covered. Pedro Neto, you could argue we've brought in two other wingos in the form of Rodrigo Gomez and now Carlos Forbes. But so whatever you think of that, there is replacements there positionally. But the Max Kilman one, we've obviously seen the uncertainty around Totti, Gomez particularly. Dawson and Santi Bueno both did a great job actually when they came in against Burnley midweek. But whether or not they will be featured through the season remains to be seen. And I'm going to take a moment to take food away from my cat. He's trying to steal my dinner. How dare he? But where was I? He's completely thrown me with that, everyone. My cat walked in and tried to steal my food. There we were. Max Kilman, not been replaced. That is the most upsetting thing. But so out the door confirmed Pedro Neto, Max Kilman, Daniel Podence, as I say, technically not confirmed, but we're waiting for that to go through, and potentially Jose Sarr. That one is more uncertain. But again, at this point, it seems like it could be happening. And in terms of loans out from kind of squad or like fringe squad players, we obviously Hugo Bueno's gone on loan, Kijan Hoover, Chiquinho, Joe Hodge, Chawanda Chawera, and Nathan Fraser all gone out on loan. I'm not really sad with any of those going out on loan. Hugo Bueno, potentially actually thinking about it, given the fact that we don't really have another left back, after Ait-Nouri, and people are discussing whether he's even a left back rather than a left wing back or a winger. That's possibly the one that I'm a bit like, I'm not sure we should have let Hugo go. I know he really wants game time and arguably needs the game time to improve because he's still very young as well. But do feel we're potentially a bit weak there. I know Totti can come across and play fullback, and I know that Doherty can play left as well. But even so, that's probably the only one that is more could have been a feature of the squad this season. The rest of them would have been on the fringes or are still very much academy or beyond. Chiquinho and Joe Hodge arguably should be playing first team football somewhere. So it makes sense for them to go out on loan because they're not going to get in the lineup right now. And if we look overall at the incomings of the team, if you look at Tommy Doyle's 22, Rodrigo Gomez 21, Pedro Lima 18, Jorgen Strand Larsen 24, Bastian Mapiu, 18, Andre, 23, Carlos Forbes, 20. So aside from Sam Johnston, who's 31, the average age there is ridiculously young. And so it's very much a squad for the future that seems to be being built now. Obviously, the hope is that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot and get into a relegation battle, or waste it by getting relegated by just buying youngsters. If we come good with the people we've got this season, there's a lot of prospect there. I mean, you've only got to look at those ages that I've just read out and think about how much longevity there is in there, or how much growth and how much potential, but not much experience, arguably. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. However, also in terms of fees, let's point out as well that they talk about they've been very prudent. We've seen in recent times with the incomings and outcomings financially. Jurgen Strand Larsen is obviously currently alone with the obligation to buy after a number of appearances, as is the Carlos Forbes one, which means potentially those two things alone means that approximately around £34 million worth of business would be counted towards next season's budget, not this season, once those are confirmed. So finding more ways to kind of spread the load. I like that. I'm not opposed to that. I think it's good. If that's a way the club can spend the money that we argue we want them to spend, then sure, do loans to buy. It works. Why not do it? Whew, my word. And there's quite a bit there, and at this time of night, I'm probably not giving it my full level of excitement, but I have to say, I think it's a pretty good window. You think about, I said, what was it, 8 players for the senior squad overall. I mean, I'm counting Bastian in there. I'm going to count him towards the senior squad because I think he will be on the fringes. But that's like 8 players. A number 9 is in there. Some great midfielders. Young centre back, young right back, a goalkeeper. It's an there's stuff across the team. Arguably, though, it's not a perfect window because we haven't got the centre back that everyone is dying for. Now, is that intentional? I don't think so. By all accounts, Wolves were putting the feelers out and trying to get a centre back up until the last moment. We've seen rumours of them going for, obviously, Dara O'Shea earlier in the week. That fell through, and a couple of others. So it hasn't worked out getting the centre back that Gary O'Neill wanted, by all accounts. Will that come back to bite us in the bum? It might do. But as Will would say, in Santi we trust. So, I mean, why not put Santi Bueno in if it's all going pear-shaped? He'll save the day, people. He'll save the day. Or more likely, Dawson, who was actually pretty damn solid and awesome when he came on the other day. He's obviously recovering from groin surgery at the end of last season and had a few, the age is getting in and he does pick up some injuries. So I think they're being gentle with his minutes and easing him back in. But maybe we will see him in the back four sooner rather than later. Now, I always have stories to tell, and before I go any further and round out today's transfer episode, I suppose it's trading, right? It's trading. It's player trading. I want to ask you, do you have a story to tell people that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Global Sports Podcast Network. Zencastr makes it easy to start a high-quality podcast built for growth from day one, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns. Zencastr makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Now, thank you everyone for being with me. Whenever you're listening to this, it might be bright and early, but I say it's for me. I'm bringing to you late and live, and it's been. I have to say, I think it's been an exciting day and an exciting transfer window. Whatever you think of it, whether it's been stressful or not, I like the fact that we had 3 or 4 signings come in really early in the window. I wish some of them would have been spread out, maybe to make us feel a bit better through it, but all the clubs seem to go into this panic mode in the last 24 or 48 hours. So it's interesting that, suddenly within the last 24 hours, there's like 3 or 4 signings come in and just doubled everything. But if we sit back and look at the big picture, I think there is some great signings in there. I'm really excited. Pedro Lima, for me, I've mentioned him a couple of times this week. We've spoken about him on the podcast. Played really well against Burnley. He's one of my ones to watch. I want to see more Pedro Lima. I think Strand Larsen is going to be great. I'm so happy he got his goal. I think he's going to be... It's just so nice to see a centre forward, like an actual centre forward, on the pitch again. It's awesome. And the partnership he's building with Cunha, just in a couple of games, looks really exciting. So there is a lot of positivity. I think we should feel positive and not scared. I know we've had a couple of, one heavy loss and a couple of losses overall. We knew the beginning of the season was going to be tough, but it's a long journey. It's not a short road, and so I think we're going to be fine. I think there's some great stuff there. I'm curious to see what happens tomorrow. Really curious to see what's going to happen with the goalkeeper situation. Is Sam Johnston going to go straight in between the sticks? I mean, with less than 24 hours and only one brief practice, I'd be surprised if he's in the starting lineup, but maybe on the bench. But at this point, honestly, with Wolves, it's anyone's guess, right? It's just anyone's guess. And Andre, I cannot wait to see, because everyone, if you the Brazilian fans, I mean, are going crazy about the fact that they're saying he is an absolute superstar. So I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting times. And hey, if nothing else, we can always put Andre in defence. Apparently, he's played there twice. So maybe that's the centre back of the future that we all needed and we never knew it. So on that bombshell, people, hopefully by the time Monday comes and we have our next kind of weekly or daily episode as we do them, I have 5 days a week, we're here, and we'll get final confirmation on those 2 kind of unconfirmed ones I mentioned earlier in the episode in terms of Carlos Forbes and then the departure of Daniel Podence and Jose Sarr potentially. But I've given you everything I've got at this point. It's late. I'm going to go to bed, and I hope by the time you've heard this, that some of these things I brought to you have been confirmed and followed up. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.